Yeah, an informal start as usual. Welcome to Webtuesday, the first one of 2007. Yeah, it's coming up to a year of Webtuesday actually. Apart from iPhone pornography going on here, tonight Cédric is doing a talk about OpenID. Otherwise, yeah, I guess. At the moment, we're still looking for spaces. I think I will be talking to you at some point. And but otherwise, yeah, I think Webtuesday will be running for a few more months yet without any stress. So, but after this, we'll be heading to Cheyenne. That's back on the 11 up to early London. And I guess, assuming there's space for all of us, drinks there. Okay. Hand over to Cédric.
I didn't make any reservations, but I hope it's going to be okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. We just walk in and we're very okay. I'm going to have my presentation in English. I hope that's okay. You can ask your questions in whatever language. If somebody can translate it to me in either French, German, or English, then I can provide an answer. Well. So we stopped that with this Apple stuff, yeah. But again, yeah, no, just well, no, I'm gonna talk about OpenID, which is something which is pretty new, and I guess a lot of people don't know a lot about it. So I'm gonna, first of all, well, we already mentioned that one. That one was That's. I hope I can. I will not going to top Steve Jobs on his announcement today, but if you're interested in really Mac fan, that's the URL you have to remember. It's not yet online. It's going to be online at this URL, the live webcast where you can watch this presentation beginning today. Like this is usually 4 hours after the presentation they have it online or something like that. Anyway, so back to my topic. First of all, I want to ask just a few questions. Just like, get everybody involved. Who is always using the same username and password for, you don't have to say the name, but you just, I don't want to, but who else, every website you come in, you have to create a login. Who's doing that? Oh, that's okay, I'm doing that too. That's not a bad thing. That's okay. That's like a design problem, right? So, well, we're going to try to solve that one. Who has an OpenID? At least some tried it. Well, I know these guys. I know them. They probably have it because of me. Okay. Who has a Google account? Oh, that one is different, right? Okay. Well, obvious. If you want to need any of the services from Google, you need a Google account, or you maybe strike, or maybe still stick with Yahoo with some people because they hate Google for some reason. Well, that's it. I'm going to do some basic things first, just to get everybody in the same topic as you've been talking about. Let's say a more complex issue today. And one thing is, there's two words which are usually heavily you mix them up. The one thing is authorization, and the other one is authentication. So there is obviously a difference between those. So shortly, usually when we talk about authentication, we talk about a process to identify whatever that person or her information, but which is usually a process to try to, like, showing the ID if you want to go into another country or something like that, like showing your identification. There's something like username and password you have to provide usually, or other technologies like which are usually used, something like challenge response. I'm not going to go into details, just to, maybe for some of you, you already know some of the names, like public-private key, which is also something like pre-exchanged, like you have a commitment between two partners and there's a pre-exchange thing, and so you recognize each other again when you come back later on. When we talk about authorization, we talk about what are you allowed to do. Once you said, okay, I'm Cédric Hüsler, and but what can I do on this service? And that's what when we talk about authorization. And well, this is like access control lists on a file system, for those who know, or like role-based access controls, usually on applications, the administrator or a normal user or something like that. These are kind of like the words that are used for that. Good. Another like pair is the thing identity versus privacy. This is something which is absolutely normal to us. Identity, well, that's how we are. That's what we do. Like the birth date and things that describes us. Well, in the online world, digital world, we know that this is a bit different because you can fake whatever you like, basically, because it's digital and you can make up anything because it's not nature has created that. So, which of course needs the vice. The other side is the privacy is. If you really give your real identity, you certainly are going to have a privacy problem because somebody else can copy just this data and show you as you are, kind of like. So it's this kind of like your name or like having something, having your private information being secured. Now there's a lot of discussion going on the web about these two topics. First of all, the whole blogger world, and that's how actually OpenID is coming from, is you make, if you have a blog post and somebody makes a comment, usually you have to sign this comment by either giving your URL to your blog post or giving your name so that somebody knows, or you do it anonymously, but that's the topic. But the thing is that there's no security there. So I can be anybody. I can get any name which I know, oh, he's famous, he has a lot of things to say about, just comment under his name and write anything just maybe absolutely contrary to the meaning what he has, and just create some FUD about anything. So this is really a problem that you can fake identities in the web, or well, somebody else's privacy is in danger because he's one of a sudden has any claims he didn't make at all at any point in time. So there's different concepts there. One thing is kind of this virtualization, and if you heard that PayPal is just going to give out credit cards which are only valid for one time. Kind of like your credit card number is always the same number. So if somebody copies his credit card number, you can easily like reuse that. Well, there are certain things that you have to know. You have this secret number on the back of the card. Oh, I can copy that too. Well, so how hard is that, right? So it's not secure at all. It's just another step to to make it not obvious or something per transaction. Like your credit card is only valid, your credit card number is only valid for this transaction. So you kind of have a system, say I want to do this transaction, you get a credit card number, you type that in, and that's only valid for this payment, and after that this card is kind of like this card, it's not valid anymore. For each payment you get a new card. This kind of system is kind of like a workaround to get around copying the same data and reuse that, because you don't control who can copy your data. Or the other system, which is like opt-in model, or I don't know how you want to call it, but it's kind of like the way that you always, every time your information is being accessed from somebody, or you give it to somebody, you have to kind of like give the permission that this data is given to somebody else. It's not like well, we're gonna see that later on in the example, but like the model that is something. Let me give another short excuse or a rant. Like one of the things, like the mobile providers, they know where you are with your mobile phone. They're not Swisscom not going to give you this data because they think, yeah, well, it's a privacy issue, or it can be used for privacy problems. So I really think one of the problems, one of the solutions could be, instead of, they would think of that I'm on that phone and I'm using a service, and the service want to locate me, because you should know where I am. So then actually the service can ask the provider where I am. I think this is the completely wrong model. It should be the other way around. It should be like my phone knows where I am because there's an API to whatever. I can only use that with my phone. I can access my location, which is kind of like a string or something. And then every time an application needs my location, I can really kind of like opt in. I can say, I want to provide my my position now. Kind of like I approve, and then they got it for once, and that's it. Kind of like you ask always the user whether you want to do this or not. This is like this opt-in model, and I think this, well, I don't know if my mother would understand it, but I would. But well, that's another issue. Good. Another two pair, and that's going to be it. Then I'm going to start with the topic, just like get into it. It's trust versus control. Well, it's this. There's a lot of things that we try or we start to trust on the web, like you either trust Google or not. I mean, you kind of like you start to have a lot of information. Like if you use Gmail, if you use all kinds of information, Google's going to have a lot of information. So you trust Google, and you need to make sure that their password thing is secure, that nobody else can like get access to your data. But the other thing is, do you really control that, or can you really control this? Well, probably usually you can't, and this is certainly a problem that a lot more companies need to kind of accomplish, or at least I don't know. Well, control is always hard because the data are lying anywhere on any hard disks, but at least give the people some kind of a feeling that they control it. So one point could be, let's say you have a login service that you log in regularly. So why not have a log file, or you can look into this application and you see a log file, and that tells you, well, okay, in the last week there was 5 attempts with wrong passwords. And you know, well, I wasn't doing that. You know, kind of like give the user more transparency about what's happening with your data, when have they been accessed, or what is happening with your password, so that you more see what's happening. Well, it's again only for geeks, but I don't know, something you need to provide the user more control about what's happening with this data that is lying on your server, like if you have a website, which is something which almost nobody's doing. Good. Last step, single sign-on, which is, I guess, this is why we all have the same username and passwords for all sites, because that's kind of a single sign-on that made on our own, without actually having technology in place that actually does the single sign-on. Well, there's two things in single sign-on. One is this, having the same credentials for multiple sites or services, and the other thing is, well, automatic authentication between these sites. So you have service A and service B, and when you're logged in service A and you have a link which clicks to service B, you're automatically in. You don't have to type the password again. Which actually, these are models I guess we're all familiar with in the enterprise world, like in Windows or in other. This has been there for quite some time. If you have kind of like the right choice of software, and you don't have like siloed software and everybody has its own user management. But usually in the enterprise world that works already pretty good. But on the web, well, that if it's not everything from Google or not everything from Yahoo, it doesn't work. Good. So what is OpenID? I opened a huge space. I'm now going back to reduce to only something very small. The thing is, it's only about authentication. So it's only about providing username and password, or providing, am I really the person that I'm supposed to, or say I am? It is about managing my identity. So managing the way which information do I provide to other people, and which information other services know about me. And it's about single sign-on that can either use, well, of course, use the same user and password for different services, and also to have the automatic login later on. So maybe I'm gonna go to a demo as next. One step is this maybe history about OpenID. It basically was invented 1.5 years ago by guys who were doing blog software, and well, huge blog software. We'll come to names later on. The thing is, the real use of why they invented it was really kind of this block comment issue, like that everybody can write comments under anybody's name, or this whole spam issue with the blocks. But I'm not sure that's going to solve the spam problem, because that's a different thing. And it's grown from the blogging world now also to websites, and it's now it's a stable state. The thing is that the specification has been written by people who do not write specification usually, so it's not really kind of like if like the standard bodies looks at it, they're just like can't forget about it. That's go home, school kids, you know. And so they're making a 2.0 version of this OpenID thing, which is then kind of like the specs that nobody understands, but is the way the specs should be written, right? So, well, I don't know if you regularly read specs, but they're usually not, so it's rather hard to read them. But this is the way this should be. So, something special about OpenID is that I'm going to use a URL or URI, depending on what specs you read. Yeah, actually it's URI. That's the correct way that the W3C is naming like an internet address is a URI and not a URL. But that's different topic. So why not use a URL as my username? So a lot of people use email addresses because it's easy to remember. They know the email address, so they can always use that one, which is an easy one. Or they use any kind of like whatever names. So why not use a URL? And that was actually the idea behind the whole OpenID story. There's some other standards which also use URLs, but they're not yet kind of like came up, at least not that far as OpenID. Because, well, as it comes from the blogger world, usually bloggers, they have their own URL, which is their blog URL, which usually their own. This is their own. They're the owner of the domain itself. So why not use that one? And that's actually the whole idea around it, where it's pretty easy. So it's no rocket science. What is the nice thing about having a URL as username? Well, you can go to this page, right? You can visit this URL. And this is actually what this login process is all about. It is about typing your URL and visiting this page, which is URL you're typing. So a little demo. Wait. No. So I'm going to. What's that I'm going to? It actually works.
Yeah.
The research in the back has been working all day to make the demo working. So the idea is, well, that's just for the purpose. It's local.ch, but well, it's kind of like this, the usual username password. And well, there's another option. You can log in as with your URL, which means you can log in with your existing account. So I have one app. So what I actually do now is I type in my URL, which is my OpenID. Of course, and I click login. What is happening now is, well, it actually goes to that URL, and it shows me a login screen. Because of course it's a special request that is done with this URL. It's not just plain that you redirect to this URL. It's a special request. You see it with all kinds of URL parameters and And well, now I have to log in on this page, on this site. And well, here we go. As next step is that this service is now asking me, or let's say that the service which I started with, local.ch, asked from beyond to have my OpenID forwarded to the service. It also asked, well, I want to know some things about this user, which I now can either say, I can edit, or I can actually say which information are going to be provided from this OpenID server to the server that is asking to local.ch. I can say, well, they can have that for once, and that's it. So if you want to try something new, you give them the information once, well, they can store it, but they not can retrieve that later on. But what happens after my name, that's my email address in my language, these are the information I provided. So this is still pretty simple, but that describes like the model. I provide a URL, it goes to the URL, I log in there, because this service, I know, I trust this service, because it's my OpenID provider of choice, and then I come back to this site with all the information, and I have kind of like a session on the other side, which is like local.ch now has a session, whatever they don't have a password for me, or they don't have a username. Well, they do have a username but no password. So you can always log in like that. So that's the basic step behind that. If we go to this myopenid.com, that looks a bit like here. So we have what we have here is something which I was talking about, identities. So the idea here is you're using this service to log in to multiple sites. But well, why not have a multiple kind of like, depending on what sites you are, you made it's for business reason or for private reasons. And then you, depending on which site you log in, you can choose one of them. So how does that, depending on which site you log in, you can choose one of them. So how does that, so how does that work? Now it's getting a bit more technical, but I hope it's going to be okay. So what is actually happening, the end user is sending the identifier, which means the OpenID, to the relying party, which in this case was local.ch. Local.ch does what is called an associate handler, or basically does a check whether this site here is a real OpenID server. And they also do a challenge response on kind of like they exchange a private private communication in the back between the sites. So they have to establish that first before they can start talking over the client again, because not that you can fake, or that this can be a fake identity server, or you can replace that. Thing is that after that you get redirected to this site, you log in, you get redirected back, or you log in, you get redirected back. That's it. So that's the basic steps.
Step 2 for every user, or is that just for a new identity provider that local hasn't seen before? So
it's actually for every new it's every new identity provider. That's correct. So if he comes on, if he knows, it's myopenid.com, and he already has a private communication with the server, he doesn't have to do that anymore, because he already has that. Yep.
How does it know that you typed in some kind of host name, I guess?
Yep.
Which had second level domain and third level domain. So it always has to be the second level domain, which is the provider, or is that mentioned in the communication? Which part is the provider and which not?
So there's actually no restrictions on how this URL construct. It can be username.myopenid.com, or it can be myopenid.com/something. So it must be a valid URL that you can request.
Okay.
So what actually what does happen is he does the association is actually done with this keytobyte.myopenid.com.
Okay.
And then but he I don't know how it actually works, but I know that in the spec it's written it's done only once for an identity provider, but I'm not really sure how it actually works. Maybe somebody, Pedro, did you debug it?
No. I mean, it goes to the page keepthebyte.myopenid.com, so then there's a link to your OpenID page.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, but that only has that he knows which identity provider it is because he doesn't know which part of the URL he has to cut in order to.
Identity provider is giving you the header with the link text, or I think 2 or 3 link text. One of them is the provider.
Well, if you use delegation, but if you don't,
You probably also have it on that side.
So keep in mind that my OpenID is a delegate for my OpenID server. So
Keep the mind, my OpenID.com is your identity provider, not my OpenID.com.
okay.
yeah,
I think that's.
yeah,
I can't imagine that.
that they can
And
do
they
this
have to
on-
do this handle every time because
guess.
of the hash change.
I guess it can be looked at in the not so specs.
Well, there's, in practice, well, we can look at. I have a log file of all the communication which I've done. So if you have the fun to, we can look into the protocol. So the thing is that there's different ways of using this general protocol here. One thing is like, is that you can say, like in the first screen, it tells me that I can cite that I can say remember my password, which is the usual function, and then then you simply remove this login part, which means you only have to provide, you say which information you really you want to provide, or which information are like if you're already chosen your persona, and the persona is always the same, then you go straight through. You don't even see this myopenID.com anymore.
Do you prove through a session that you're coming back again? How do you prove that you have already logged in before?
Well, that's a cookie with
It's
the
a session number.
that's a cookie with the myopenID.com, which is again something between your trusted identity provider and your browser, and nothing inside your login.
But one question about the cookies. The cookies are valid for example, my OpenID.com, or not the other party.
Yep. Well, he's doing a redirect anyway.
Yeah, but then there need to be some communication between the user agent and the. Okay, yeah.
He's doing the redirect. It's like if you look
Yeah.
at, I don't know, most people maybe have also an Passport account or Live ID from Microsoft. Well, look, I have some resilient here. Okay. Well, Google is better, right? So, so you always see that if you have a Passport login, you always, at least if you say also remember password, you always see this redirect going to passport.com when you're coming back.
Okay.
It's kind of like the same model. You have to go through this step in order to get the secret key between the.
So in the redirect, you're carrying the step called the URL you're redirected to contains the key. Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but this is the biggest thing that's been bugging me about OpenID was you've also passed on some information about yourself.
You pass your OpenID, yeah,
And
in the way back you pass your email and the thing that the information there in the GET request.
And that's all in the URL.
Yep.
So I mean, typically there's a limit on how much you got. I mean, maybe that's changed.
I don't think this is the issue, but the GET request is all the log files. So you have email and everything in the log file.
It's in the request, not in the body or of some request.
The redirects, redirects are always GET. You can't have there's no body in the redirect. So.
And you can't.
It's not really defined what what should happen after a redirect on a post request. But
No, it's all good.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, it's okay. So it's really, there's certain, they do say, it should all be SSL. But it's still.
It wasn't.
Well, at least the last part was not SSL, right?
Well, the main problem is the logs, that you have huge log trails on all the servers. You could easily mine for whatever information that's.
Is it encrypted?
Plus browser history, etc.
Yeah, sure, that's true.
Yeah.
It's not encrypted, I guess, in the URL.
We'll have to look. I'm not sure.
In the HTTPS request, the full
Well,
URL
HTTPS, of course.
is encrypted.
HTTPS, of course, but I'm not sure if by default the information are encrypted. There could be. I'm not sure. I have to see. I didn't look at that, but we're gonna see that. Well, there's another model it's not recommended, but it's like if the relying party, it's basically a library you install, which your PHP or whatever ASP.NET JSP server can execute your OpenID authentication. If this is not able to keep a state, so it's just completely stateless, and it's like the dump mode. That is called dump mode because the server is really like you can't do anything. Then there is a different mode which you don't pre-exchange a key because you couldn't remember that. So you have kind of like a possibility to check the authentication after that it happens. So you can run through everything, and let's say on every request, you could basically go back to the OpenID server, check whether that's okay, and go on. So, but I guess that's for legacy reason at some point.
The main problem is just the dump mode is that you can do replaying attacks. You can use the same URL for logging in again, which you can't with the other. So that's the main problem with the dump mode.
Because the username and password or something is in there, but for authentication.
There's no password in the URL, but you can take the same URL because it doesn't remember the hash.
Okay.
So you can put that in the location bar and you log it in again. You can't that with the non-dump mode. As far as I know.
And then there's an immediate mode, which is a bit special. Sounds a bit scary to me, but it should be okay. The thing is that in case you're already logged in on your relying party side, well, let's say no, the relying party side knows which OpenID you have, and the identity provider has you already trusted your identity provider on the persona and on your password. But then they can do a straightforward. They can simply do the authentication handler first, and then say, well, log me in with this user. And there's only one answer that can the identity provider needs to say that's okay, and then you can go on with your request. You can do this in one request. You don't have to do this redirect stuff anymore. So the idea behind that is I actually never saw a real use case. I only see the examples kind of if you have a site and you have a hidden iframe. And you need to log in to some kind of like sub part of this to fill out a form. You can do this login without actually reloading the whole site. You can do this in a hidden iframe. You can do this sub request.
So this is
load that. But in case it fails, the request is not okay, then you automatically fall back to the redirect and you have to log in everything. Which is then not. Come on.
The use case is for example, you're logged in your blog.
Yeah.
And you go to another blog where you all the stuff did before. And then you make a comment, for example. And then this blog can you automatically identify without you having to do anything. Because you're already logged in your blog. Because you gave the permissions before. The first time you made a comment on the other blog. You said that's okay if that blog identifies me. I think the only difference is if it fails, it doesn't do anything. If the login fails, that's it.
Well, they provide you with the URL to redirect, but you don't have to.
But you shouldn't redirect it.
Ah, okay. In the specs, that there's going to be a URL you can redirect to, but I'm not sure if they really do this. Okay. So. That's for like the technical side. We've been coming up with this topic before. It's delegated authentication. It's actually one of the really nice features of OpenID. Is that you can have really your own domain. You can make that your OpenID just by like opening OpenID at myopenid.com, which is a public service. You can use that. But then you can go to your blog, to your website. And on the root of your website, like the first document is loaded, use the index.html or whatever, you can add these few lines in the document itself. And then, which basically was the only thing we just do, this is a kind of like a special redirect to, like you type in this in the form, and this tells them to redirect to that service to login. So the security there is, they think you're the only one who can edit your first document on your website. So this is It's pretty cool, but there's a lot of systems today that work like that. If you want to claim your blog on certain sites, you have to add something to your page, and then I check this page wherever you change something on this blog template, and then that automatic proves that you're the owner of that blog. So there's a lot of systems that works like that.
I mean, these three lines, they have no security implications because you have not opened any session or opened any login. You still are normally redirected to git.myOpenID.com and have to log in, have to allow the other.
That is correct. That is correct. But
have access and everything.
Well, yeah, it's true. But they could redirect. Let's say this is the existing site, and I've been signing all over the place with that name, right? And somebody fakes my thing. It goes to another. Let's say it goes to yours, and you log in with that name. Well, you take over my identity.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So. That is, it's actually what actually is happening. It's in that step. Let's say in that step. No, maybe correct. Well, it is. Mm-hmm. It is in that step. He's actually trying to. He first goes to the keep.ch, reads the home page, finds out it's somewhere else, and then redirects to the right server. So it's actually that step that he's doing this delegation, resolving the delegation. Well, this is what I've been showing before. This has originally not been part of OpenID in the 1.0 specification and as I guess 1.1, and they've been adding that as simple properties exchange, whatever extension to the specification, which is right now. But in the 2.0 version, they're really going to integrate this nicely, and I guess they're also going to do some extensions there because it's pretty like say simple yet compared to what other systems other competitions in the same fighting for the same spot already have been thinking about. But I think it's an interesting concept. It's kind of having multiple personas. When you log in, you can provide, you control which information you want to really give to this site, instead of that there are other concepts where they can get everything and you have to choose on the other side then which ones you really want to store. Kind of related to that, make some competition comparison. Well, how much is that used, or who's using that? Well, the live journal guys, these are the removable type. The live journal is 6 support. Yeah. This is the Brian Fritz.
Brad Fitzpatrick.
Brad Fitzpatrick, which is actually the inventor, or at least he wrote most of the initial spec.
Yeah, his name's on the spec at the top.
Must have been, yeah. And in meantime, so let's say beginning of the year, there was almost no site beyond beginning of the year, 2006. It happened that fast. And just over 2006, there were still, at least some early adopter sites coming up, or like Technologic or something. So, I don't know if you know that. It's like social bookmark, like Delicious. Apparently better. I've never tried it. Zoomer is something like Flickr, but just like sharing pictures. These guys, they're actually doing something cool, but I'm not sure if it's actually used in Europe. It's only in US. It's not like building up your online reputation by like all the other guys doing Yahoo Ask, or like you can. There's all kinds of questions, and you can answer the questions. You get credits and points for answering questions of other people, and then depending on that, you get a reputation, which you then can use on other sites. And there's or wiki travel. So there's a plugin for wiki, MediaWiki, which is one of the most used wikis at least on the public web. There's also a few OpenID providers, like the myopenid.com, which I've used before, which is probably the best one, because the guy who's doing that is very involved in the specification, and also writing. There's been written all kinds of implementations of the standard itself. And very interesting is that the VeriSign has also jumped on the boat for that. They've been struggling to solve this problem. I mean, they should be actually the guys who should solve that problem, because they're the guys with the SSL certificates, and they always try this with these personal SSL certificates, but they failed miserably. So they've been trying. They're now kind of like jumping on, I guess, everything which looks like kind of a solution, and they're also helping to get this OpenID stuff running. But they're jumping on every horse, so I'm not sure if you want to integrate that into your blog. There's a WordPress plugin, so there's all kinds of. You can go into details. Yeah. Well, what can you do? Well, create your OpenID, play around with it. Second, if you have a blog or a site, you can certainly, if you have access and the time and the knowledge to do it. If you have Ruby and Rails, it's actually really easy. I tried it myself. I don't know anything about Ruby, but Patrick had to help me at some point. I was failing, but I managed to. I also made a blog post on my blog where I explained how I did it, which is somehow doable to extend. So, like to secure a website with a simple OpenID. Well, if you want to have fun, you can watch a presentation from Dick Hart. Well, he's really called like that, so. He's really called Dick Hart. Hart with DT. He's a guy who actually started a lot of this buzz around this. One thing is OpenID. Here's some other ideas about which goes much beyond OpenID. It's this Identity 2.0. It's like managing your online identity and controlling your online reputation. And he has a very good presentation style, which is absolutely entertaining. The way he's presenting stuff, so it's absolutely worth looking. Well, already the title of his presentation looks pretty interesting, I guess. So, well, show your friends. There's a simple movie from one of the UK guys who's been explaining how that works. Well, I'm coming to the last point, then we can go to questions and things like how does it look like with the competition? Well, there's a lot of people who are around for a long time. Well, we got all these. Microsoft actually started with their Passport, or I guess the project called Hailstorm or something at the beginning, which like everybody like, they're gonna take over the world. With this Passport, and they failed because I guess they've been focusing on the wrong thing. They've been focusing on e-business and credit card, wherever they should have much more of like focusing on getting easy integration of their service instead of focusing on the credit card. Well, Google has also, like Microsoft, Google and Yahoo has opened their authentication to other applications. So if you build an own website, you can add the Google authentication to your website, which means everybody with a Google account can log into your website. It's also like a library. You have to install in your machine and your web server, and then you can do the login. So, which is they don't support single sign-on yet, which means you can automatically always have to log in. But that also looks pretty interesting. But this is kind of like depending on where you come from or which side you are, you can actually choose. Well, I'm the huge Google fan anyway, and all my users gonna be Google users anyway. So like if you do a mashup with some Google services, well, it's obvious that you're using the Google authentication to secure your site, because every your user is going to use it anyway. So there's a whole other system. Like when they started with Passport, everybody was freaking out. And they created something like the Liberty Alliance, which was everybody else than Microsoft. And but they came up after I don't know 5 or 6 years working on papers, they came up with this Salem, which is a lot of papers and specifications you don't understand. And I'm not sure if it has been implemented. It's also got kind of like this. I always call it needs to be thought through every level. But whatever. It's a cool 3D thing. It's not from their specification. That would be too nice. No, what is absolutely interesting, well, you probably, I don't know how much you know me, I'm not, well, I used to be a Microsoft fan, but I'm not anymore. You see it on my computer. But well, I'm actually a huge fan of card space, which is something new, which Microsoft is coming up. It's actually not even fits to this because it's something different. It is, the idea behind card space is, well, it's pretty easy. You have all kinds of cards here you're providing, and why don't rebuild this system online? So you have your Visa card. So why not go? Why don't have Visa has a service? You can log in. Well, there needs to be some login there, which they don't solve. But the other is then you get a digital document, which kind of like is your credit card. And whenever a site want to have your credit card number, you don't type in the credit card number. You kind of like give this virtual card, which is this card space of these cards you then can choose, and you can give this card, which is again one-time issued for that site, and they can prove it again in the back with Visa, whatever that's correct, and then your authentication is happening. So what they don't solve the authentication itself with that. It's pluggable, so you can use your Live ID, or you can use your window account for desktop application, or you will in future probably going to be able to use your OpenID to do that, and then on top of that you can have these digital documents moving around. And the same also goes for your identity card. So the government can give you kind of like your digital identity card, which is a dream, I guess. A lot of people will have that happen, and you can vote digitally. Hey, guess what? And so you need to have this you need to have this digital card you can like share with the site. Also on the opt-in model, the cards, the site is asking for it. You say, okay, I give you this information, and which is a very interesting thing.
Well,
yeah?
One comment there. One nice thing about this is also that when you log in, it's built into the operating system. So when you log in, you're only having the card space, and you can use the card only inside that card space window. So it's really hard to fake it, because the whole screen is being blacked out or something, and you only see the card space part. So you cannot bake it in a browser window.
Like phishing or something.
Phishing stuff. But one question, do you know whether the cards are only stored locally, and what happens when you
so there's the first thing is usually comes out, well, it's going to be proprietary, or Microsoft will give it up, right? No, it's not. It's actually all open standards. That's something good. So well, the UI is of course proprietary, the way they display it. But the things that the card, how the card is signed, and all the information that are in the card, and the way the protocols, the cards are moving forth and back, this is all this VS, whatever, there's some of standards there again. People do nothing else and they do the right specifications. So tons of security standards from the web service groups from W3, C3. And well, coming back to you, yeah, this was my question, kind of like, well, these cards are great if you have an operating system, you're always in the same place. But well, I'm logging on whatever. I'm logging to this terminal, and then you want to use my cards there. I then transmit my cards from one hardware to the other hardware, which again, I guess it's kind of the Microsoft
cards.
Yeah, well, maybe you can you can well, but that's kind of like, this is not what I would like to see, right? I want to see iSync there. I don't want to have that stuff. I don't want to have to care about it.
So card bank.
Card bank, yeah. Oh. But this is also like a step of managing your identity online, that a company that trusts you, like Visa, or you, because you have an account and they know you, they kind of like give you this card, and it's trusted, and then you can give it to somebody else. It's kind of like this, you can propagate trust over multiple steps, which is something which is missing completely today. You just like you copy paste information, which is no trust at all. Well, that's it.
That's
which is built on that 3D blocks
okay.
there.
Okay. Yeah. And it's the university uses this stuff to out. That's
which is built on that 3D blocks
okay.
there.
Okay. Yeah. And it's the university uses this stuff to authenticate all from my school I can always sign in data stuff and such things, and I think it's very similar concept to OpenID. It's more complicated and a bit more web service and more XML. And
the thing there's one difference. There's one difference on this. It's actually a huge difference. It is that the different identity servers, they need to trust each other. So if you have like one identity server and you log into another one that's like the federated identity servers, they have to trust each other all in order to propagate the rights, which is something which works great in a controlled environment. But in the internet, everything is kind of like everybody's doing his own story. Yeah. So you need to have a model that somehow works without having these identity servers trusting each other, which what I think is interesting in OpenID.
It's more for closed group, for universities or for some companies who share its accounts together, but for the whole login stuff. Yeah. And so it's also too complicated.
Yeah, I think the SAML and the security section markup language is more used in an enterprise context, as far as I've seen it. Not very much in a web context.
Yeah. Usually you also need a specific. Usually need a specific client to log in, which your browser can't do. And that's also, I guess, one of the barriers to get this thing up and running.
Is the OpenID server infrastructure also open source and freely available, so that one can use it in an internet environment?
So actually,
OpenID doesn't work in the internet.
Okay. Right.
So, and the other question, yes.
First of all, everything which has the name somewhere OpenID is open source. So being the server, it's actually called customer, which is the relying party, and server is the other part. Everything is open source, including spec, of course. And the code, it doesn't work in intranets.
It works in everything.
You can make it work. I mean, it's DNS and redirecting.
No, but your OpenID server has to be.
Well, of course, the OpenID server needs to discuss with like if you have myOpenID.com, if you set up your own OpenID server in your own house and everything in then
company wide.
Yeah, then it works.
Okay, you need HTTP has to be everywhere.
You need to convince your system administrator to open some ports and some firewalls.
I mean, remembering EDS.
Don't tell me.
I mean, what strikes me as most interesting about OpenID is that it's one of those things where it hasn't been designed by committee. It's been designed by a developer with a real need. I mean, I've seen this guy Brad Fitzpatrick's also a Perl guy, and he's done actually some quite amazing stuff that's like real software, but it's also got the magic kind of. It's simple. This whole thing is as simple as it can be and still work. And versus like things with WS before. So it's like the sort of thing that like normal people would think, okay, we can add that to our website. That's the impression I get.
But the real question is, how do I explain my mother that she has to type in a URL into the login box? It's like,
don't tell her.
It's like that. I guess it needs generations, but no. It's as always. There's something new. She knows that she has to plug in her iPod that this thing is syncing, so she has to learn that way. I mean, it's something that.
His grandmother has an iPod?
I don't know. Maybe mine can use it.
There's actually a better example for that. It's Yahoo. In Yahoo, every username that you would actually use is taken, and people get used to type in mom 63 ABC exclamation mark.
Yeah, but it's an endless discussion on the OpenID mailing list that why not using email addresses? Because people are used to type in their email address as login. But yeah,
Mail server doesn't serve out requests. That's it.
Yeah.
And SFTP is broken anyway.
I guess
By
the
design.
other big step forward is this is more or less decentralized. Like as I've read, providers, you could set up your own provider. You don't have to use my OpenID. And like Passport was Microsoft wanting to be in the center. They probably, if everyone had started using it, they probably would have crumbled under the traffic. Right?
It's completely decentralized.
Yeah.
So
and you can switch as well. I guess.
Yeah.
You can switch to that.
Utvikling. Ja, dat vind ik niet. Nee, ik ga het zo zeggen. Nou, nog in eigene Sache. Ja. Also, we have local.ch, we are going to use OpenID as default login scheme for our accounts. Which means if you create a new account, it's as simple like you have to choose a username and a password, and you have to give your information. That's like any other site. And then we automatically give you an OpenID, which you can use on other sites, which provides OpenID.
And you run the server.
Yeah, we run the server. If you already have an OpenID, you don't have to create an account. You just get straight in, because we get the information from the OpenID server. So we have both. We're actually doing like this combined thing because we don't want to annoy people like, you cannot log in if you don't have an OpenID. Well, I guess what? Who has an OpenID? Nobody. But I mean, it's kind of to get the thing rolling. We also providing everybody an OpenID, and we maybe hope that we can convince some other sites in Switzerland to kind of maybe also jump on the same. At least you don't have to be your own provider, but you have to allow OpenID as a valid starting to create an account. It's like you don't have to have your own. Like, you don't have to provide all your users OpenIDs or something like that, which we do because we create new anyway. We don't have accounts before, so it's for us it's easy to just start from that. But if you have a site, and that just makes it easier for a user to create, like simpler to create a new account because they don't have to fill in the whole form. They just go into the login form.
And I guess
maybe it looks like that. They can choose. They can look like, and they never have to be on that site before. But if you log in here once, they automatically create the account. You may have to ask other questions afterwards if it's not enough, which is stored in the persona, and then you get to see.
But that's not the plan.
Huh?
There's no question asked. If you're logged in, you're logged in.
In our case, yes.
Yeah, in our case. But but if you're too late and you want to ask for, I don't know, you want to have some other properties which are mandatory, you have to ask for them before the account is created. Yep.
What's an INAME?
INAME. Well, okay, here we go. The thing is that there's other standards. Well, the nice thing is, right. There are other standards that came up probably the same time, like the last 2 years, which are also grown up from the community to solve the same problem, commenting blogs. And the good thing is, all these guys, they got their head together, and there's now, like, if you install the OpenID library, it also can handle other standards. Like, there are other standards which actually works the same way. Now, also with the redirect and blah, maybe not with the domain, but INAME is kind of like I guess it's their name, you always add a URL before it, does the redirect with that, so it's kind of like the URL, there's only one provider for INAMEs, I don't know how this actually works, but there's other things that it's all got to be... What?
There's a help.
There's a help link. Well, I don't know. Totally not implemented yet.
I mean, just put that into perspective. The development on that has started on Friday in a slow week.
I guess the other point. So when you did this, you then in the local database there's now an account for you. with minus a password, but with stuff like email.
We remember in the OpenID, and when it comes back, they're like match, wherever do we have this OpenID already in terms of account?
So you could mix with like old stuff, legacy authentication that you maintain. You could mix a database or a table of users.
So you can have your own system running on, but you can add OpenID later on as additional way of creating accounts.
I'm a bit afraid when our users log in until late. And
we as local.ch, we're certainly gonna start like explaining the users what is this OpenID all about, like having a little flash movie which explains them what they can do with that thing. I mean,
but you're running the server yourself, so the OpenID server will be in the local layout.
That's correct. So the people go until late, they log in with their
they go to the local server to put in their password. Random example.
I mean, the thing is also.
But you're all free to install your own servers, and there's no restrictions there.
Is there a referral model?
The question would be, let's say I go to local and create a new account, and I don't care about OpenID, and I get an OpenID account.
So what?
Yeah. Now a week later I go to Hüsler, and they also use OpenID, and I create a new account, and I get another OpenID account.
So what?
Not normal. I have like 5 passport accounts, no problem. But I can't do with passport. What would be interesting for OpenID is, could I later on merge these things? Like say, could one account claim the other? Like I have an identity on Tillate that I would like to keep, and I have one on.
So we started completely. Good question. The thing is, there is actually
your identity on Tillate.
Yeah, but there would be some way that you can like authenticate on both, and then say, okay, I'm the same person.
The thing is.
Do you know Open Merge?
Was it iMerge?
No. My 2 personalities, they never merge.
No, it's just like you said, we want to get this rolling on local by creating new OpenID accounts. But later on, this is getting a problem.
Okay, wait. I haven't yet. The thing is that in the specs, there's nothing like that explained back, because there's actually it does not foresee communication between identity providers, which would be necessary to kind of like have a trust, again, kind of like know this one. But there's another project which is called Claim ID. But well, the thing is that the idea there is to claim everything which belongs to you to the internet. So the idea is the site itself as well. There you go. So the idea there is that you can, after that you logged in, you can go and say, okay, this is my Flickr page, and this is my, and then there are certain ways to authenticate or to prove that. And again, here you can combine multiple OpenIDs together. You can say these are my OpenIDs, but they're still sitting on their servers because you don't move them, because the system only works because these servers are there. But you kind of collect everything that belongs to you to this ID. And you also have a nice URL, which is again an OpenID. But then you have this, which everything that you say it's mine. You can like manage your online stuff.
I think there's one problem with this claim ID is that I think everything is under the Creative Commons license, and if you have your identity, everyone's allowed to use it.
That sounds like a basic problem to me. Which they have to solve somehow. Well, you might have to ask this question to these guys. Well, they've certainly been. They certainly had that question.
I need to come back to the original problem. Yep. As an OpenID provider, I could theoretically put in or implement migrate to OpenID functionality, which means I have a username and I can associate that with another OpenID, which just works. Normally you log into that other OpenID. Now I, as for example, OpenID know, this person is this user, and then I can join these 2 accounts together.
Sure.
That would work. probably would.
Yeah, but not between, like if you have 3 different OpenIDs on 3 different servers, you can't merge them because that's hard.
From what I know now about OpenID, it should be possible to allow an OpenID server, so you have OpenID provider, to proxy your request to another OpenID server. So it probably wouldn't scale, but it should be possible. So you log in to your OpenID provider, say, well, this is my other OpenID, and I want to use that one, but log in with your ones, and they double the whole scheme.
Sure, you just put in a delegate.
Yeah.
Then you can do this in circles.
I mean, the only problem behind this is that I guess that OpenID will fail with this only have one account thing if every site is starting to create new accounts because they think, well, nobody knows about OpenID, just let's create a new account. I mean, if you know the icon and if you are educating, oh, that's an OpenID account, then I have already one. Yeah. That's like getting out the message that this is an OpenID account.
Well, it's certainly, I mean, everybody has a lot of accounts today, so it's not something that you don't start from scratch. So of course, like the solution that you can assign your legacy account to an OpenID and then it's kind of like get replaced by that. That's certainly something which is not part of the standard because it's something completely off. It's not part of the transaction of the login itself. It's part of how to manage your users. Well, I can't say anything about whether OpenID is going to be successful in future or not. I only can say it's simple, and I like it if it's simple. And it's not coming from, like as he said, it's not coming from any standard bodies who, I don't know, who waste, not taxpayers' money, but I don't know which money, but to make standards which nobody uses at the end. So this is kind of like, and there's a lot of, like I say, community going on there, like that people are making implementations and testing things out. Well, there's certainly work that has to be done on the usability part. That there's just like kind of the standard where they do this with this icon that you use this icon, recognize that. But there's more to be done, and there's a whole discussion about phishing, which is actually not a problem that they can solve because it's a general, like SMTP that was broken because of spam, but it's not like the same thing which browser providers, at least if you have the latest version, has kind of solved with this kind of checking every URL, but if it's a phishing site, this is the only way to solve that. Anything else is just like you have to get your head around that. Well.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Macro.
No, we're at the end. Just